So my name's Zoe Hodgkinson. I'm the digital and social media platform consultant at LHH, and I work with a whole range of people who come through the organisation, helping them with their digital footprint and with their interactions with social media. So what I want to do today is to talk a little bit about how we can improve or maintain or extend our personal brand into that digital space. Because it's a webinar today, there won't be an opportunity for interaction, you asking questions. If you have got a question, I can see that you are talking in the chat already. If you can drop that into the Q&A, I will pause halfway through and there will be time for questions at the end. And Harry, who's producing today's session, will ask me those questions. If anything isn't clear, then you can always contact me via LinkedIn and I can answer questions there. So I hope you will enjoy the session, and as I say, any questions, please drop them into the Q&A. So I wanted to start off really by thinking, what is our digital personal brand? And as we say on the screen, it refers to the brand you use to promote yourself. And we're all different, so we all have different things that we want to emphasize, different experiences that we had, that we use to, when we interact with people, to give an impression of who we are. Because we're moving into a world where, and we've had for the last 18 months been in a world where we're not meeting people face to face, where we are interacting over Zoom, where we might pop into the office one day a week, but we might not see colleagues that we would have normally seen on a day-to-day basis. We're now in a situation where people are finding out about us. That first impression that we're making, they're often doing online, and then perhaps using that information to inform how they feel when they meet us face to face. So I was saying, why is it more important now? Well, we're all aware that I'm sat today in my house, in my kitchen, and now I can hear that my neighbour has started banging on the wall. So I'm very aware that my working environment has changed from 2 years ago, when I was regularly going into an office and I was seeing and chatting to colleagues over a desk or meeting them face to face in a meeting room. So we now have to think about, how do we make that digital first impression, or how do we reinforce who we are when we're not necessarily meeting people and having a chat over coffee. And one of the reasons why I think it's really important now, and when we're thinking about social media, is that perhaps what we've done in the past is thought, well, we put things up about ourselves and we talk about ourselves. But if we're not actively looking for a job or actively thinking about the next move, then perhaps what we do is we sort of have our profiles sort of set in aspect. We don't think about them. And a stat I read this morning, that 45% of people on LinkedIn, and currently there are about 740 million people on LinkedIn, have an out-of-date profile. So if someone was searching for you and you've not touched your LinkedIn profile for 3 or 4 years, or your profile on Twitter, then people are getting an impression of you that's from several months ago, several years ago, not how you are currently. So we need to think about what we need to do just to ensure that if people do come and try and find us in that digital world, they're finding the version of us that we want them to find. So that strong first impression is that ultimate first impression. And I was reading an article from this lady, Kendall T. Johnson, who's a mindset coach. And what I thought was interesting was how we think about ourselves in that digital environment is quite important. And there are ways in which we can promote ourselves digitally. We're talking now, we're talking on Zoom. Some people love talking on Zoom, some people hate talking on Zoom. So we need to think about, in that digital space, what can we do to ensure that we're giving the best of ourselves? And it may be that actually, no, talking in camera isn't something we enjoy doing, but we can think about other elements of the digital world where we can actually put things in place so that we are giving that impression of ourselves that we want to give. So I just wanted to give you a sense of where we are in the sort of digital landscape at the moment, and why it is important to engage with the digital platforms in order to extend that reach of our personal brand, so that we can impress people with who we are. And if you look at the sort of global numbers in terms of people who are on digital platforms, it's 42% of the world's population. Now, if you look at the figures for Facebook, YouTube, etc., you think, well, those don't add up to the 32 billion. And that's because several people will be on lots of different platforms. We don't just stick on one platform. And it's quite important to think about the platforms we're on, which ones are useful to us, and which ones are the ones we're going to use to emphasize our professional brand, and which ones are we going to use because we want to have conversations with friends, we want to show our kids' first day at school, we want to talk about our pets. And I think that's quite an important thing to think about. When are we a professional person digitally, and when are we a private person digitally? And then think about how we use those platforms and how we use their settings and their privacy in order to ensure that if somebody is looking for us digitally, they are finding the version of us we want to find. So be on Facebook, be on Instagram, be on Twitter, but if those are the places where it's used socially, then perhaps think about your settings. Are you just being seen by your friends and family? And if LinkedIn is where you want to be to promote yourself publicly, or Twitter, then have your settings set to everybody so that people can find you and can discover about you, but discover about the professional you. I think the settings thing is quite important. Several years ago, I was working at the BBC and we were doing a piece around Safer Internet Day. And what we wanted to do was show how important it is that you're across your settings and your privacy. So we took a mother and a daughter. The daughter was about 16, the mother was probably in her late 40s. And we got somebody who was an expert in social media. But what we asked them to do was just to do things through pure search. We didn't want anything underhand, anything nefarious. And what he did was he just did a search on them. We couldn't find anything out about the 15-year-old daughter. She'd absolutely nailed her settings down. The only people who found her on social media or saw her content were people she wanted to. The mother was completely different. We found old MySpace sites. We found Friends Reunited. Facebook was open to everybody. And in terms of the personal brand, that meant we found out lots of different things about her. We found out about things about her life at school, what she was doing in the early noughties, but we also found out mother's maiden name, past addresses, names of pets. So potentially damaging from a brand point of view because it's opening the door into her personal life, but also could have been potentially damaging from a financial point of view because we found out enough information to be able to get bank accounts. So however you're using social media, it's really important that you do understand what you're doing and who you're sharing things with. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to have an overview of the social media platforms and how you might decide you want to interact with them. We're going to talk in detail about how you can use LinkedIn to build that digital personal brand. And then once you've got that digital personal brand, what you can do to extend that brand reach and engagement. So almost you've created the best version of yourself you can digitally. Now, what can you do to promote that? So you're giving yourself either a step up in your career, you're magnifying your the impression you give to your friends and colleagues. So it's those three stages. It's how you want to interact with social media generally, it's what we can do using functionality of LinkedIn, and then what you can do on that particular platform to make yourself what LinkedIn like to call a thought leader. Now, this is my disclaimer. Social media platforms are constantly evolving and user testing. They normally have user groups, so we're going on about user experience and what can we do better and what can we change. In the news last week, Facebook, the holding company, became something called Meta. Facebook for Instagram. Instagram decided to use stories. That was something that Snapchat originated. That rolled out onto Facebook. LinkedIn used it. LinkedIn decided it wasn't working, so LinkedIn has ditched stories. Now, Microsoft owns LinkedIn, and Clubhouse, which started about 18 months ago, during the lockdown became very popular as a place to do audio chats and audio networking. And that's something that's been rolled out by Facebook and Twitter. So it's important when I talk about not just putting something out there and then leaving it, because the platforms are evolving and the functionality is evolving. You need to think about how your personal brand evolves as well, because you're ever changing, the platforms are ever changing. So it's really important just to bear in mind that statistic from earlier, that 45% of people on LinkedIn have an out-of-date profile. So when we think about the platforms, they're all about engagement. They all want you to provide content. They want you to stay on those platforms and consume content, because in the most part they're free. So they need to attract advertisers, and the data they get from you about how long you spend on a platform, who you are, is very, very useful in terms of selling space on those platforms to advertisers. They want you to share information. And they want you to spend as much time as possible on there. But when I use the phrase, the more you put in, the more you'll get out, that's not just in terms of I'm going to spend 10 hours doing this, therefore I'm going to get lots of interaction from it. It's about being clever around which are the platforms that are going to work for you professionally. Are you a really visual person? Do you like recording things? Do you like talking about things? And perhaps YouTube and Instagram are where you want to go. Actually, I'm more analytic. I like things to be organized. So it might be that LinkedIn is the platform for you, but it's just thinking about the platform you want to engage in a professional sense, in your branding sense, and then using its functionality to best enable your goal, which is to present the best person you possibly can be in a branding sense on a digital platform. So the next couple of slides are just to sort of say again around the potential audience, the volume of people who are using social media. And I thought this statistic, I know it says consumers, but actually it does reflect the increase in social media use in 2021. And it's not just the younger generation who are using it. You know, people born in the 50s, that's over a 50% increase in people who now go to social media as a default, who use social media to discover things. Years ago, when I joined the BBC as a journalist, if we wanted to find out about somebody, it was a matter of searching in cuttings and trying to discover things in quite a manual way. Now, if I'm going to meet somebody or I want to find out about somebody, my default is I'll Google them. So you want to ensure that if that's the default now that people are using, that when they Google you, and if you are a frequent user of LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile will be one of the first things that you can find. And it's a good sort of yardstick if you do Google yourself, just to see what comes up there. I Googled myself and there are 5 different versions of me. 5 of them are me on different platforms, but one of them is somebody far younger than me from Brighton who's got a really interesting Instagram account. So it's worth knowing what's there already, so that when you're thinking about constructing that personal brand, you know what are the things that are appearing and how you can mend those and meld those into what you want them to be. And again, this is just another slide to sort of give you a sense of how people are using social media and how prevalent it is. So this is every minute of every day in 2020. These were the interactions on the various different platforms. So think of the thousands of photographs on Instagram, you know, over 500,000 tweets on Twitter. These are large volumes of people who are of content that's being interacted with on these platforms. Therefore, it is really important that A, you have a digital presence on these platforms, and B, that digital presence is the brand you want it to be. But no one's going to deny that there's a lot wrong with social media, and there's a lot that can still be done to ensure that people aren't being trolled. It's not the land of the keyboard warriors where people hide behind a screen, but it's also a place that it can do good. Marcus Rashford did amazing things using his platform, his digital platform, to extend the free school meals campaign. So we can use it for good. It can be used for positive. And I think it's just really important that when you do anything on social media, you think about the interactions you're having and that they are positive and they are supportive, and you don't get caught up in wormholes of discussions that can go in all sorts of different directions. It's about presenting the best person you can be and being true to that best person, and everything that you do online reflects your personality and the image that you want to convey to people. Now, we are going to concentrate on LinkedIn today because I think the functionality it offers is really tailored to building that professional personal brand. But as I say, you may decide that you want to look at other the platforms in order to promote yourself. And as I say, if you're thinking about having platforms that are purely for you and your personal life and your personal interactions, then just make sure that you keep them like that. So that's your world that you inhabit. But if you are going to use them in a professional sense, then it's really important to think about getting the best use out of that. Now, I've chosen this guy called John Gregory Smith, who is a writer, an author. He's a TV cook and he's a chef. And he has a presence on several platforms. But there are several things he does. He uses a really good personal image. So I know that it's the same person and I've not come across somebody with the same name. He works with that platform. So on TikTok, he does 1 to 3 minute videos. On YouTube, he does longer videos. If he's got news or information, he posts that on Twitter. He writes books and he sells those books via his website. So he's really clear about a navigation around his platforms. There's always a direction of travel, and he's always promoting the latest thing, and that any of the sort of look and feel of the other platforms tie in to what his story is at the moment. And I can find out about him on any of those platforms because he's got links to tell me where I need to go if I want to discover more information. And that's really important. And although the functionality and the look and feel is different, there is that commonality of understanding that I'm finding this person and he's using that platform to promote the best version of himself. So just to go through, what does he do? He understands his target audience, and he creates content that he knows his audience like to consume, because he looks at the content, looks at the likes, looks at the interaction he gets, and therefore he's promoting himself and his brand by putting that extra content on there. His social media profile uses the functionality that's available on all of those platforms and reinforces who he is and what he does. He also makes sure that you can navigate between each of those platforms. So if you want to find out more about him, or he's talked about something on LinkedIn and given you a link to a video that sits on his YouTube page, there is that clear navigation. We come on to this more when we talk about thought leadership a little bit later, but he posts regularly. So the people who like him and follow him know that there is going to be something from him on a regular basis. But, you know, I'm sure we've all used digital platforms, and if we go somewhere and there's nothing new, we tend to just mentally think, oh, that's not been updated. If people disappear off your radar, they tend to drop off your radar. So if you're going to use your digital presence to talk about yourself and to talk about things you're interested in, and you have an engaged audience of people who are interested in that, it's important that they feel there's a regularity of seeing that content. The posts are appropriate to the platform, and that's not just in terms of the content and the tone, but if he's on an Instagram or a video heavy platform, the content he provides is video heavy. If it's LinkedIn or Facebook, which is more text-based, then it's more text-based content. But again, we'll come on to this when we're talking about the actual content that you can create to promote your personal brand. It's thinking about how you can extend your network. So are there relevant groups to what you want to talk about and to who you are that you should join, and then actively participate in those discussions. Grow your network. Think about the people who you admire in your network, who you might want to follow. See the sort of things that they do, part of the research that you create for the jobs you want, or the role you'd like to be seen as in your role. Become that thought leader. Be the person who talks about things based on your experience. And again, it's really important that people can find you. So if you have got a social media profile, if you've got your LinkedIn profile, then have that, you know, is that part of your email footer? Is that part of your auto signature? And if people find you on a platform, how do they get to know you more? How can you bring them into your world? So as I said, we are going to focus on LinkedIn because I think the functionality is very tied into a business world, and it gives us the opportunity to create a profile that reflects the totality of who we are. But it is really important to think, are there other platforms that would be suitable for you, that you feel would be a good way for you to reinforce who you are and things you want to talk about? It may be that you've got two facets to, you've got your career, but then there's something you're very passionate about. So you do one role, but actually you're heavily involved in a charity, or you volunteer at a rugby club or things like that. So are there places where you want to talk about who you are professionally, but you also want people to know that there are other facets to your life as well that bring out the greater part of your personality and your brand? Now, I'm in my role at LHH, I have several conversations with people who say, I've had a LinkedIn profile for 7 or 8 years, but I haven't touched it because I haven't been looking for a job. And yes, LinkedIn is known as being a place where you can find new roles and new jobs. But LinkedIn is a bit like, I'd say, if you buy a new washing machine or a new microwave, there are lots and lots of different bits of functionality on LinkedIn. And at any one time, there may only be 2 or 3 that are relevant to you. But certainly, yes, there is the jobs board function, but there are lots of other elements within LinkedIn that can be really useful for you when you're thinking about how you build a personal brand digitally, because you want either work colleagues or people you're going to meet as part of your role to understand a better impression of who you are when they're not getting to meet you face to face. And it's important, you know, LinkedIn is global, but as I said earlier, the social media platforms change all the time. There are 52 million people who are no longer on LinkedIn because they closed the Chinese operation last week. So again, things are changing all the time, and you need to think about that. And again, what do you want to achieve? Does LinkedIn provide the functionality that will really help you engage people in understanding who you are? And I think what's important when you're thinking about building a LinkedIn profile is to get people to peer review what you do. Are you the person they know? Have you written about yourself in a way that engages people, that makes people interested in who you are? And I say, getting people to read your about section, your summary, the way you've talked about your past career or your skills and experiences, because we're not often very good at blowing our own trumpet, and sometimes we don't emphasize the things that actually are great about us because we want things in a very tied down, neat way. So I pulled some quotes out from various people who were talking about what you do when you establish your brand. And I think these things really sum up the elements you need to think about when you're starting with that blank sheet of paper, or you're going back to a LinkedIn profile that you've not looked at for a while. Are you actually selling yourself? Are you distinguishing yourself from other people? Are you talking about the awards you've won? Have you got the skills that you know you can achieve or you've achieved, and are they in your profile? Have you made yourself look and feel distinctive so that you are sharing what is special about you and what you bring into that role? Not just the functions that you provide, but is it the enthusiasm? Is it the other experience? Are there other things that you're not talking about that you can really build into a personal profile? And I think the thing for me that's really important is do your research. You know, the best thing when you engage with a digital platform is when you're comfortable with it. If you're using it a lot, if you're seeing what other people are doing, if you're looking at other people's profiles, you really get a sense of, oh, that engaged me, that impressed me. You know, if it's engaging and impressing you, then it's going to engage and impress other people. And there are things like LinkedIn top 20 voices. Those tend to be American, but there are LinkedIn change makers. There are lots of different people who you can search out on LinkedIn and look at their profiles and get a sense of, actually, yeah, I can see that I can write in a similar way, and I don't just have to write about my physical achievements. I can put some enthusiasm and the passion and the things that drive me. And the section on to do research there, certainly in your summary, in your about section, write that in first person. And I know sometimes it's difficult because you feel like, I did, I have, I will, but actually, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, it's almost like listing all the things that are about you and what make you the person you are, and then reordering them and then cutting them down so that in the 2,500 characters you get in that section, you're putting the most engaging and interesting things about yourself in there. So there are mind-blowingly large amounts of features that are available to you when you're building a LinkedIn profile. You've got profile pictures, you can record audio, you can record video. There are new things coming all the time. So the creator mode now allows you to put hashtags in.
Great offer from Charlie. If you're interested in buddying up with her on your own job search, please do so. Randall's in here and happy to connect. Great.
So that's an example of LinkedIn Live. Unlike Instagram and Facebook, which allow you to go, or YouTube, which allow you to go live if you're on the platform, LinkedIn restricts the live streaming. You need to be have all-star status, and we'll come on to that. And you need to be in creator mode, and we'll come on to that. But it gives you the opportunity, should you wish, and many businesses use it, and people like Andrew, who's one of the top voices on LinkedIn, he uses it. He works in career development, and he hosts live sessions encouraging people to talk about where they are in their career transition, but also to share their LinkedIn URL so that that people can expand their network on LinkedIn. Well, as I say, there's an awful lot there. So let's have a look at those features in a little bit more detail. So you start off, you've got your headline, which is the piece that sits under your picture, and you get 220 characters. Often people put their job role in there, or you might want to list the skills or keywords that emphasize who you are and what you do. The background picture is an opportunity to put something in there that sets off your profile picture. Again, I think psychologically, when you come to a profile and you see that everything's filled in, it gives you a sense of confidence that this person has taken care over building their LinkedIn profile and they've put some time and effort into it. What I would always say with LinkedIn, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Take your time, go do it in little bite-sized chunks, review it, come back to it again. There are additional features that have been rolled out. Some you can only do on the app, and that's if you want and you're comfortable and you like doing it. Instead of having the profile picture, you can see there is a little white circle with a red yellow cross that's just whisked up the page. That gives you the opportunity to record 30 seconds of video. Now, for some people, including myself, I can't imagine anything worse than clicking onto my LinkedIn profile and seeing video of me. Some people are absolutely brilliant at it. Some people really engage with the camera. And it's a fantastic way, especially if you've started in a new role or you've moved into a different role within an organization. If somebody clicks onto your LinkedIn profile, they immediately get 30 seconds of you talking about you, who you are and what you do. Perhaps you're more of a radio person and you're more interested in doing audio as part of ongoing user research. And because LinkedIn is global, there was some feedback that said that actually sometimes we're a little bit embarrassed if we're trying to contact people and we don't pronounce their names correctly. So there's the audio function. Again, you can only do this on the app, but it does pull through to the desktop where you can record 30 seconds of audio. Now, in 30 seconds, you can say a lot more than your name. And several people use the video and the audio as opportunities to either sell themselves, sell what they do, talk more about their business. So again, these are all things that you can do that can help people engage with you more and get a sense of who you are and who your brand is. You can add pronouns. We'll go into the about section in a minute, but what's really important in the about section, or the summary section, is those top 3 lines, because those top 3 lines are visible to everybody. And what you want to do is you want to grab people in those top 3 lines so that they hit the see more, and then they read more about you, more about why they would want to engage with you, and learn more about who you are. Your featured section, if you've published articles, you've appeared at events, you've got links and various things, you can put that in there so people get a sense of the role you play in the industry, or in a wider sense because you've done keynote speeches, you've appeared at events, all those sorts of things. The activity will show the most recent things that you've done on the feed. So is that you've liked something, you've shared something, you've written something, that will be there as well. Your experience is that traditional experience, the sort of CV experience of the roles you've done and the key things in your role. Your education, licenses and certifications. So are you qualified in something? Have you got an additional industry related qualification? Skills and endorsements, that people can endorse you for things. They can say you've got a top skill in things. You can identify skills as well. And recommendations, which is that opportunity for you to talk to people and for them to write something about you and the role that you play, or something that you've done that's specific. Again, with that, I always find it's best to sort of contact somebody off platform, ask them if they're willing to do it, discuss what you want to get out of that recommendation, and then contact them via LinkedIn for them to write that recommendation so it sits on your profile. And all those things are really important. And if you fill those in, the algorithm will love you. And what the algorithm wants is for you to fill everything in so you're presenting the best version of yourself. It then wants you to interact with the platform and comment on the platform lots. And if you do that, you end up higher in people's feeds because the algorithm will reward you for spending time on the platform. It also rewards you with something called all-star status. Now, you don't have to fill in absolutely everything that was on the list of functionality in order to get all-star status. But the list on the right-hand side are the things that you have to fill in order to get that status. And you might think, well, what's the point in that? Well, as you can see from the statistics here, you're 40 times more likely to receive opportunities through LinkedIn if you have all-star status. And only 51% of people on LinkedIn currently have that status. So you're putting yourself in virtually the top half of the users of LinkedIn because you've filled everything in. The algorithm will like you for that. It means that it recognizes that you are active on your profile. And if you're active on the platform as well, it pushes you up in search feeds. And it also means if somebody is Googling you, your LinkedIn feed, your LinkedIn URL will be one of the top things that Google will find. And if that's where you're spending your time to write your professional brand, it's an important place to be. The other thing about the profile picture that's quite interesting, and the stat that I read recently, is if you've got a profile picture, you're 21 times more likely to be viewed. And it's also psychological. I think if you look at something and there isn't a profile picture there, it sort of feels like your profile isn't finished. Now, it could be that you've got a profile picture there, but you've put your settings to private or to network only. So again, I think one of the important things with any social media platform is that you understand the settings and the privacy, and that you're happy with who you're sharing things with. In an ideal world, LinkedIn want you to be open to everybody, but it may be initially when you're working on your profile, when you're not quite sure, you've got it into a place where you want to open it out to the world, that actually you decide, I'm just going to stick with my network. I'm going to restrict it until I feel I'm ready to publish to the world. Because on LinkedIn, if you publish something, it's there. You can also go into your settings, and under visibility on LinkedIn, you can toggle so that if you're doing major work on your LinkedIn profile, perhaps you haven't touched it for years and you're going to reorder your experience, or you've got extra things to fit in, you might want to turn off your notifications so that you're not notifying your whole network because you've just added a new industry, or you've added something that LinkedIn thinks is significant and wants to share it with everybody. So all this talk about your profile section is great because it's the stuff that you can actively do yourself. You want to optimize it so that you're using the functionality of each section and you're using it to the best of your ability so that you're really putting the stamp of your personality into your profile. So the about section, or it's sometimes called, when it's pulled off onto a PDF, the summary section, is that bit where you get to talk about yourself, where you get to give people a real sense of who you are and what you bring to the roles you're in, or the role that you're in, or if you're thinking about the future, the role you would like to be in. So again, it's about how you structure that section, and you get 2,500 characters. So your first paragraph, as I said before, those 3 lines that are visible, you want to motivate the person who's reading that to want to see more. And the best ones I've seen have been people talking about their passions, their experience, and what they bring to the job or the role that they're doing. In the second paragraph, it's putting the meat on the bones. What are the things that you do that motivate you? So we say here, the value and impact you make. So people really get a sense of, it's not just your job title. This is what you do. This is why you enjoy doing it. And the third paragraph is the call to action. Now, is it that you want people to contact you? Would you like people to join your network? Is it talking about something that you do in your specific role that you want people to be enthused about? And as I say, the great thing about this about section is it's free text. So you can put in whatever you want. It's not about trying to hit a certain sort of drop down menu or things that you have to fill in. This is your opportunity. It can be as long or as short as you want it to be, but make sure it's clear, that it's succinct, and that it is really inviting. So just some tips for the branding in your about or your summary section. I want to be engaged by it. I want to feel that I get a real sense of who you are. And if I've done this because I'm going to go into a meeting with you, that I'm actually really excited about meeting you, and it's going to give me conversation points. It's going to make me want to ask questions of you. It's really gripped me. And I think these 8 tips, they speak for themselves. Write in the first person. I want to know about you. And I think that keeping it short and sweet is really important. I think that comes back to, start off long. What are all the things you possibly want to cram in there? And then start prioritizing them. And then, is that jargon or is that acronym something that's actually absolutely important, because that's part of the industry, and my brand is really important for me within my industry? Or actually, could that be confusing because that's just an acronym that's used within your particular company, and therefore might put somebody off because they don't know whether they should ask you what it means or not. Keep it really, really straightforward, and make sure that you are highlighting the things that you've done. You're not hiding yourself away. You're not sort of being modest. You're actually not bragging, but you're really being true to the achievements that you've gained and why they make you who you are. And it's, make it personal and show your personality. And I think, again, if you've got somebody you can talk to and say, does this sound like me? Am I coming across as I come across when you meet me? And if you can get that right, it means that you are engaging people. But again, don't just think, right, I've done it and that's it. I can leave that now for 5 years and go off and do other things. It's really important to keep revisiting it. When I was going through my slides today, I realized that one of the slides is from a presentation and it's got my old about section on it. And I was a bit shocked when I read it, because I thought, gosh, that doesn't feel like me. That doesn't feel engaging. So, I now just put something in my diary, and it's just, have I just had a quick look at my LinkedIn profile just to have a quick check that actually, obvious things. Have I changed my glasses so my picture doesn't look like me anymore? Have I done, have I done something additional in my job? So in my experience section, do I need to add something into that? It's just thinking about those things so that you don't just go, right, I've done that, I'm going to tie a bow around it and just leave it. Now, the experience section is the traditional section of the CV where you write down, this is the job, this is when I'm to and from. these are the things I did. But what you can also do with LinkedIn is you can add photos, videos, whether things that you did as part of that role, that you can just add more to it. So rather than just being a whole selection of bullet points of the things and the roles you did within that job, you're bringing out a sense of who you are. So did you, as part of that job, host a conference, run a facilitation session? Are there extra things in there that show that, yes, you did that headline job, but you also did a whole load of other things that you brought that added your specific additional value to that role? Again, the third person thing, I think, is very much up to you and your industry. Some industries are very much third person in that role. Some people talk about, I did this, I did that. I think in that section, it's very much you understanding how you would write and how you would expect to see that if you saw it in someone's CV. I think the other question that I often get asked around is, how much of your CV do you put in your experience section? Should it be a replica of it? And I think that's very much up to you. But it's certainly important to have a real strong sense of who you want to reflect. So in your past roles and the things you list in there, are you pulling out the things that reinforce where you are at the moment? So, for example, I spent a lot of my career working in TV, but I wanted to move, and I moved into doing more digital things. So when I was looking at my LinkedIn section and my experience section, I was thinking, well, I really want to make sure that people understand that I've got a knowledge of digital and I've done things like that. So I would be pulling out and emphasizing things that said more about the experience within this particular role that leaned more towards digital, and perhaps would talk less about the things that were more to do with making linear TV, because I wanted to make sure that the brand I was projecting forward was reflecting where I am now and where I want to be going forward. And I just wanted to show you this. If you go into your Me section and then view profile, and this is on the desktop only, you can edit your LinkedIn URL so that you can get rid of all the numbers and letters that come after your name. So depending on how unusual your name is, you're more likely to find it in a really straightforward way. LinkedIn won't let you save it unless it's unique to you. But again, if you're putting your LinkedIn URL in your email signature, or if you're just sharing it with people, having it look neat and tidy, again, gives the impression that you understand LinkedIn and that you've spent a bit of time honing your profile to make it look as on brand, as professional as possible. Now, there are two things I just want to show you that I think are quite useful in getting a sense of how you can appear on LinkedIn. Now, if I can find you on LinkedIn, I can pull off a PDF of your profile. I'm doing it on my own here, but you can do it on anybody's. This is something that anyone can do. So you go into the More section, you hit Save to PDF, and what this does, it pulls off a document that gives the detail of your profile. It doesn't have the pictures, but what it does is it gives you the contact information that you've decided that you want to share, the top skills that you've pinned to your profile, any certifications, and then your About section becomes a summary, and your Experience section becomes the sort of the standard CV part of your profile. And again, it could be that you're going to a conference and you're one of the people who's listed as a speaker, and someone's just decided, I'm going to do some research, but I'll do it when I'm flying or whatever, when you can do that again, and they've just gone in and pulled everyone's PDF off rather than going onto your LinkedIn profile. Now, the other thing you can do, but you can only do this on your own profile, is just check you've got the keywords in your profile that reflect the role that you do or the roles that you do. So it's pulled off a PDF here, and now what it's doing, it's sort of saying, well, what's your job title? What's the job title that you want people to find you for? So I've put series producer in because that's one of my recent roles. It has to be a job title that LinkedIn recognizes, and you hit apply. And what it does, it now goes through your profile and it says, that's great. Yes, the resume is only visible to you, and you can edit it now and not have anything to do with your LinkedIn profile. So you could decide you actually just want to change your CV here, or you want to search for a different job title. But what's key is that it's now gone through and said, yeah, if people were looking for a series producer because they wanted to contact them for any, maybe a job, or it may be that I'm just looking for professionals within a certain arena because I want them to come to a conference or I want them to do a talk for me, I've got keywords in there that they've used to find. What it's also saying is you've got keywords in there that people have used to search for. And if you've got those skills and abilities, then you need to think about putting those in either your about section or your experience section so that people can find you if they're looking for an expert in a field. And I think, again, that's just a useful little trick to ensure that every now and again you just go in and check, are people looking for slightly different words when they're searching for people? And again, if you want, you can print that off and use that as a CV. But as I say, I think that's just incredibly useful as a way to just check that you're using industry standard keywords and that they're in the body of your profile. Now, just before I go on to how you can then build on that profile to raise your personal brand within a wider network, and just ask Harry whether there are any questions in the Q&A.
Thanks, Zoe. So I believe our colleague Ross had a couple of things as well to raise. In the chat, we have questions around the presentation, very positive feedback, people finding it very helpful. They're asking about materials, and the answer is yes, we will share materials after the session. There's also a question around if someone's been awarded an achievement award showing a company logo, do they need to seek permission from their company to use a logo on their LinkedIn profile?
I would say it's probably wise, if you are going to share something publicly and it is someone's logo, that you just make them aware that you are going to do that. I would say, and I'll come on to this a little bit when we're talking about when you're writing things and giving your personal views on things, that you check with if your profile has got your company logo on it, or if you've been given an award by, my feeling would be if you've been given an award by somebody, they've given you a public award, and therefore they'd be very proud of you to post it and talk about it. But I would always say, just to be aware of company policies. My background is the BBC, and as you're probably aware, there's been a lot in the news about what BBC employees, and especially public-facing BBC employees, do in the social media space. So I would always be aware that even if, and my whole point about talking around your brand is being positive, but it's worth checking and just making sure with either your line manager or your social media team that if you are doing something, that you're doing it in line with company policy, because it might be you being the most positive, proactive person in the world, but because of the way that your company's funded, or because of a particular allegiance it has, that it doesn't want certain things made public. And I think sometimes the safest way of you doing that is to talk to your social media team around, if you're sharing things, talking to them about what the policy is. But I would say, if you're sharing a logo that's not necessarily your employer, it's probably just checking that they're happy to do it. And 9 times out of 10, if it's an award and it's a company that's awarded it, they really want the publicity from people saying, I've won this award. It reflects very well on them as well, because your network will see that, and it raises their awareness of that brand with your network.
Thank you. And one other question. Could you please show us again on how you ended up at that keyword part? Do we need to upload our CV for this functionality?
Yeah, let me just go back. So, okay, so I'll run it again. So let me just get to the bits. Right, I'll just let it run. So what you need to do, you need to go into your profile and you need to hit the More section. All right, so it'll show it now. So you go into More, and as I say, you can only do this on your profile. You go down to where it says Build a Resume. And then you hit Create from Profile. and that will then pull a PDF off your profile. And at that point, you can add the job title you want, hit apply, and then that will bring out those keywords. And you can keep hitting the little stylus in the corner and putting as many job titles in there as possible. And it will just go through and it will tell you. The one I did one for somebody, and they asked me to put in, they were a risk manager. And I just put it in mine, and the only one that came up was communication. So it will tend to find something in there. But as I say, if your profile is as allied as you think to the job roles that you're in or you're looking for, or you may want to move into, then it's just worth checking that you've got those keywords in there.
Thank you, Zoe. Another question around use of photos.
Yeah.
Is there any advice over whether this should be a professional headshot or something informal or personal? And is there a sort of trend towards photos of someone in action, like presenting or speaking?
I've seen a lot of I would say you sort of understand your industry, and some industries really want a sort of professional head and shoulders shot. I would say I want to see your personality. I think there have been sort of some criticisms within LinkedIn that during lockdown it became very akin to Facebook, with people talking about their friends and their family and putting pictures of their dog in things. I would say when it's coming to your profile, you want to reflect who you are, and have a sense of, it needs to look like you, but it doesn't have to be professional. And I think sometimes I've seen professional photographs, and when I've seen the person, it's like, that doesn't look like you. It looks like you in the office 6 months ago, but it sort of threw me when I actually saw the person themselves. So it needs to look like you. I would say, though, that it has to be a professional version of you. What you can do as well is on your background photograph, if you have been, and I've seen several people do this, if you have done keynote speeches or you've presented at conferences or you've done things like that, then use that as your background photograph, sort of knock it back a little bit. So what you're saying is, here's a professional profile photograph of me, but also immediately saying, look, I speak at industry events. So you're immediately giving people a sense that your brand is somebody who, yes, you do a job, but you do it to such a level that you're invited to talk to your peers about your experiences. So it's sending those signals out.
This actually links quite well, Zoe, to a question we've had as well about the shift, or the shift potentially from LinkedIn being not, a professional platform anymore to more of a personal platform. You certainly see more people kind of telling us more details about their personal lives, or personal details on there, when it really is essentially a business tool. What's your thoughts on that shift at the moment?
I think it's sort of gone both ways. I think there was a lot more of, and I think it sort of started off because people were doing something, and if they'd been typing that at their desk, they probably wouldn't have mentioned that the dogs just attacked their ankles. And I've sort of seen it go from it being a lot more of that sort of more personal life impinging on work life. What I would say is that you sort of get the LinkedIn feed that LinkedIn has decided from what it's learned from you to give you. So if you really want your LinkedIn profile to be as professional and as useful to you as possible, then it's really important that you interact with the feed and interact with the posts and the various things that you like. And LinkedIn learns from that. And an example I can give you is, as I said, my background is sort of TV and media. And as my role in LHH, I've got several career transition consultants, and they're often saying, we don't see many media jobs. And I said, well, I see a couple of them a week in LinkedIn. So what I'll do, I'll like and share them, and I'll put some hashtags on them. So if you want to find them, they'll be under those hashtags. And I did that once or twice. And then the following day, I got a few more. And I think in probably 4 weeks, I've gone from 1 or 2 a week to 4 or 5 of those a day, because the algorithm has gone, great, you're engaging with this post. Now you're sharing this post. So great, you're promoting it in your network. And then you're adding it to a couple of hashtags as well. So you're putting it into a whole different network of people. And obviously that's what LinkedIn wants to do. It wants you to engage and share things. So what I'm finding is now I'm getting a lot more of those sort of posts because LinkedIn has learned that I like them. So I think you can sort of engineer your feed to be the sort of things you want. And if there are people who are constantly posting about things and you think, I'm not interested in that, I'm actually interested in these areas, this is a subject matter I care about, then your engagement level with those feeds will push those higher up in your awareness and in your feed itself.
That's a really great answer. Thanks for that, Zoe. I think that's all the questions for now, so we could just probably carry on.
Yeah, that's right. And there will be, I assume we've got half an hour left. There will be time at the end. So that's great. Thank you. So this is the bit of LinkedIn that I find the most fun and the most exciting. You've done the slog, you've done the marathon, you've gone through your profile, you've got your picture, you've thought about video, you've done your about section, and now it's like, actually that's my sort of passive bit. That's the sort of, you've done it now you want people to come and find you. And so it's about interacting with your feed, and LinkedIn have come up with this great thing called Thought Leader. And it's this idea of actually you creating really good quality content and interacting with people who create really good quality content. So you're sharing knowledge and expertise, but what you're also saying to people is, I don't just do a job, I've got something that I bring to this job that makes me better than the sum of the experience you see. The LinkedIn top voices, again, they tend to be American, but actually they're really interesting people. And when you look at how they use the functionality, it's quite impressive. So, as I say, there are no rules with social media. The great thing about social media is it's yours and it's how you want to interact with it. But because you've spent this time building up your personal brand, it's now thinking, right, what can I do? How can I put my stamp on the world? And they've identified these 4 types of thought leader. So do you think outside the box? Do you think of new ways of doing things? So rather challenging in a disparaging way, you're challenging things by saying, why can't we do more of this? Couldn't we be thinking about this in a more positive way? Are you inspiring people? Are you letting people know? And there's been a lot of this during the last 18 months that, you know, there are ways of thinking about how we can still be teams, even though we're all sat in our kitchens around the country. Can you inspire people by sharing things that someone's done that's really inspirational? So you're giving people some interesting thought around something. Is it about teaching people? Is there something that you've learned that's actually been a really valuable life lesson or work experience level that you just want to share with people? Or is it about advising people because you've got a level of experience that you can share interesting thoughts about things? And there's no right or wrong way of doing it. And you can be all of those things. I follow a guy called Stephen Bartlett, who set up a company called Social Chain. He's about to be a Dragon's Den. And what I think is really interesting, he shares a lot about self-belief and thinking about yourself and not trying to get too isolated, and, you know, taking time for yourself. And sometimes just reading those things, especially if you feel like you've been stuck in your kitchen all day typing on your keyboard, sometimes can just get you to sort of think slightly differently. So it's a combination of thinking about things in a very work way, but also thinking about how you can use your experience as a professional in industry to think about how people are working in their jobs. And if you've not got that opportunity to go and have a cup of coffee with somebody when it's all getting a bit much, you've got that the digital way of doing that, and hearing from other people and their experiences. So it's that thing of, what do you need to do? You don't need to do anything. It's what you want to do. James, who I worked with many years ago, is great. He writes, he runs a company now, but he talks a lot about his industry and how the industry's changed and the things that they're doing. And it's a real update on what he's doing, but it reinforces him as an industry leader, as somebody who's talking about things in the news about his company, or he'll be talking about new approaches to things. And I find it really interesting. I engage with his content a lot, so I tend to see a lot of it, and I find it quite inspirational how the way he's working with his company, with his employees, and what he does. So again, it's what's your particular viewpoint? What are the perspectives that you've got that you might not think are very interesting, but actually to other people they're really valuable because you're bringing a life experience and a thought process that they've not thought of. So the most important thing when you're doing anything, as I say, we talked about when you've divided your personal and your public, is about you, because your feed will be unique to you, and you want to make sure that in the way that you engage with people, that you're getting the sorts of things out of it that you want. So what's important is you get that engaging profile. I've just used an example here. This is from the app rather than the desktop, but we've gone through it in detail. If you're going to start talking about things in your industry, the chances are if people really like it, they'll want to follow you. You can't stop them well, you can stop them, you can go into your settings, but people can follow you without you having to accept them. But that means they'll look at your profile. So you want to make sure that when you're talking about the things that you're passionate about, that, as we've said before, that your profile really backs up where you are and why you can speak with authority on these subjects. So, as I say, LinkedIn, as in all the social media platforms, are really keen to help. They are aware that that blank sheet of paper syndrome can stop people doing a lot of things. So they have created a very handy 50-page guide, but don't worry, I've gone through it. And it breaks down how you can become a thought leader. And it's like anything, it's that thing of start small. It's like you don't decide to run a marathon. You start with the couch to 5K and you do all sorts of things. So it's that crawl stage, which is you've worked on your profile. You've not decided that it's finished, but you've decided that it's in the right place, and it's going to be a work in progress. You're following colleagues. You're thinking about companies that you're interested in. Are they your company? Are they your competitors' companies? You think about peer groups. Are there organizations or groups within LinkedIn that actually will be very useful for you to join, because you'll hear conversations around things that are happening in your industry or things that are happening in allied industries that are really useful to inform what you do. Looking at the top voices, again, that's really useful. You can Google the top voices. You can Google Britain's top voices. They've actually done quite a bit of work now breaking things down into different groups. So it might be that there's certainly Andrew McAllister, who is an industry lead in sort of career transition. Think about the things that you want to talk about. That might feel like a bit like, oh, I'm not quite sure, that is a blank sheet of paper moment. But then look at the sort of things that you're seeing, that you're interested in, that you might want to comment on, or you might want to like and share. And then it's like, okay, perhaps there was an industry article on something that you think would be really great to share with your LinkedIn network, and then you can add a little bit of extra onto that as well. So again, start small, start by engaging with people rather than thinking, all right, I'm going to write something myself. But as you're engaging, look at how other people have commented and always be true to yourself, so that when you're putting forward your view or your opinion on something, it's always a build, it's always positive, because what you're doing is perhaps you've seen something that someone in your network has posted, and somebody you don't know has commented. You really like that comment, so you like it. That potentially could be a new engagement to join your network. Or it could be that you're writing things and your colleagues are seeing it, who haven't seen you for 18 months because you've all been out of the office. But again, it's that sort of sense of, oh, it's really nice to hear you talk about that. I think that's really interesting. So it's building up those conversations that you might have had over coffee, but you're having them over LinkedIn. But you're also, again, just saying to people and reassuring people in their minds that you're not just your job, that you bring lots of other things to the role as well. So the walking stage is actually now you've found your voice, you're sharing more, and you're planning the sorts of content that you want to engage with on the feed, that you know that perhaps what you're going to do is one big meaty piece of work that you've thought about, and that you might just do that once a month, but then you might, you've seen some interesting articles from valid places that you know are trusted sources, and that you might want to share those with your network, or you might want to add a hashtag so that it gets pulled into a feed of like-minded thoughts, because all those other articles have also had the same hashtag added to them. And then we're on the run stage, and this is when you're feeling really confident around posting things, interacting. Again, I think, you know, in an ideal world, and you can read articles that say I posted 30 things in 30 days on LinkedIn and now I'm a super user and X, Y, and Z. That's absolutely fine, but this isn't your full-time job. This is a method of you reinforcing your personal brand, and also reassuring your colleagues and informing people that you're not just your job, you're actually somebody who thinks in certain ways, and you bring lots of different things to the job, and that actually you feel confident enough to discuss these things, and you're widening the experience you've got with your network. Yeah, you can decide, actually, if you're really keen on this, you could decide to host lives and talk about things and run groups and various things like that. But again, this is your social media, so you really need to think about how you can fit this in with everything that you're doing, because there's no point thinking I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then you're up to midnight every night because you've got your day job as well. It's working out what's the best for you, so that you've spent the time developing this digital brand, and now you're using your feed and your comments and your thoughts to raise awareness of who you are. The creator status is something that you get when you get all-star status, and what that does, if you click on it, it looks like a little speaker or a little satellite dish, and it's in your dashboard section that only you'll see on your profile. And then it gives you a little text box under your headline, and you can add, I think it's 4 or maybe 5 hashtags that you regularly post into. And again, if you do that, if somebody has seen something that you've written, found you as a profile, and they immediately see that you're posting into these hashtags, again, it gives them a sense of what you talk about regularly. And again, that instant impression that actually you're somebody who is really up in their game and really at the forefront of what you do for a living. So just to summarize, when you're thinking about creating content, you're not the Kardashians, you're not after millions and millions of views, so brands will spend a fortune for you to post on a social media network. It's about engagement, and it could be really niche. There was a gentleman who was an exec at LHH, and he'd written an article, and it was on a very niche area in risk management. And it got about 100 likes, and but off the back of it, he got 4 approaches of people who wanted him to come and talk to them about various things. Would he be a speaker at something? So although it was a very niche area, because he'd used the right sort of hashtags and it had got in front of the right sort of audience, he was immediately picked up as an industry expert, and that people wanted to talk to him and understood he had a level of knowledge that they wanted to benefit from. But there are lots of other things you can do. There are text-based posts. You can add original documents. Videos are really popular, and you get, I think it's 5 times the amount of engagement if you post a video into your feed. Polls are great because you don't have to think about writing an essay. You can just think about what the 3 or 4 options could be. LinkedIn are brilliant at this. What they do is, if they've sort of said, you know, is it going to rain today? Yes, no, maybe. And the 4th one is, I don't know. There's something else, answering comments. So what they're doing is, polls are great because they're really low level engagement, but also having that 4th option means if somebody feels quite passionate about it, you've immediately got them to comment because you've given them permission to do so. Again, hashtags are really important because what they're doing is, if you add a hashtag to a post, you're pulling that post into a feed that's with a whole load of other content that's about that same subject because they've added that hashtag. What I would say, hashtags on LinkedIn are less dangerous than ones you find on Twitter and other places, because people tend to be very like-minded and business-like when they're in LinkedIn. But do check them, because you don't want to suddenly end up in the middle of a whole load of content. I think the obvious one that I would say is that a lot of people are putting hashtag sustainability at the moment because it's topical. But actually, there's an awful lot of things in that hashtag that don't really refer to sustainability. They're just, people have put that because they think it's I think the hashtag's got something like 13 million followers, so they know that people are likely to look at them. But if you post something and it gets lost in all that discussion, then it's really not a lot of use to you. The other thing you can do with hashtags that can be really useful is, if there is something that's gone viral that a lot of people are talking about, and you feel that you've got an angle on it, it's a really good way of getting your skills and expertise in front of a very different audience. And the example I would give of that is, if you remember the whole controversy around the Caterpillar birthday cakes, and the social media teams from Marks and Spencer's, Lidl, Morrison's, everybody were all piling in, and there were some really interesting conversations under hashtag free Cuthbert. I had a look at that hashtag, and what was really interesting were there were lawyers, there were HR people, there were a whole load of people who write regularly on LinkedIn who thought of an angle of how they could talk about hashtag free Cuthbert, but get their knowledge and expertise into that hashtag, so potentially in front of a whole different audience. And if you like a pillar strategy, what I've done is I've just sort of pulled out the crawl, walk, run into some action points that you can think about in the short, medium and long term. So the research stage, the planning stage, and then the analytics stage. You know, are the things that you're writing getting good engagement? Has something worked well? Let's do more of it. What was the point of me writing that? It did really badly. I'm going to adapt that. So it's reappraising your goal, and are you happy with the amount of effort and time you need to put into this, and what are your long-term gains? What are you hoping to get from it? But always remembering that it's not set in stone, that it is something that you need to keep tinkering at, you need to keep working on, because things will change. There'll be new functionality, there'll be a new way of doing things, and you need to make sure that your profile feels as aligned to where you are and where LinkedIn is as possible. So I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of two thought leaders who I think do the job really well. So Alex Conic is a media business academic. He teaches at various MA schools at universities, and he is very good at pulling out articles that touch on his area of expertise and posing a question. So he's not sort of throwing facts out there, he's appraising an article, he scatters his hashtags through the body of the article, which make me actually go to them, because I'll go to the hashtag, then I'll go back and read the rest of the article. But he always poses a question. He's never sort of saying, I've got the answer or I agree. He's making me want to engage with him. Jo, again, is, I work with Jo at the BBC. She's brilliant brand manager in children's. She's now working for a global company. But what she's doing is, her expertise is children's media, children's brands, and she talks about them. And it's great because she's talking about them from a point of view of understanding and working in the industry. It reflects really well on the company she works for, because she talks about lots of different elements of the industry. And because of that, she is now considered an industry expert and gets invited to talk at various industry events. So in sharing her knowledge and her expertise, she's put herself, yeah, I'm employed, I do this, but I also now speak on these things as well. I'm somebody who I can be trusted in the industry because I understand and I share this information. And this was something I got last week, which I think, all the social media platforms want to help you because they want you to create content, because they want that content to go on the platform so that other people engage, so that people stay on the platform longer, so they've got great stats for advertisers. I've got creator status on. So I got a message last week from Audrey, who was saying, are you stuck for what to do next? What I thought I'd do is I'd just tell you, these are 4 areas that are actually really popular at the moment, and when people post, they get great engagement. So can you put your spin on these? Or is there something you can do, you can talk about from your area of expertise and share that with your network? Because if you do, it'll get great engagement. So again, LinkedIn, I've got a LinkedIn business page, but I don't run it anymore. It just sort of sits there, and I use it as examples when people want advice on how they set up business pages. But every week I get a message, a notification from LinkedIn going, hi Zoe, your page, you haven't posted on your page, but this article, it's trending at the moment. So why don't you read it and engage with it and comment, and then you'll get a whole new audience to your business page. So yeah, the engagement from the platforms will help you, and as I say, gives you that sort of inspiration to think, actually, I could write something about imposter syndrome, and I could talk about it from either a personal point of view, or I could do a general piece about, or I could do a poll. So what it's doing is saying, look, we're giving you some ideas. Now you go away and create that content for us. And the one last thing I wanted to show you, if it worked, there we go. So LinkedIn will tell you how you're doing. So you go into your URL, overtype where it says feed and write in sales SSI. And what it does, it comes up with a sort of breakdown. It calls it your social selling index. You don't have to pay for it. It is part of Sales Navigator, but it's free. And it breaks down how you're doing. So look at this. I really do need to do some work on engaging with insights. I've not done that recently. I need to think about, I probably, although it's good establishing a professional brand, I probably need to go back and do a bit of tweaking. But then what it says is, this is how you stand in your industry. So I'm in the top half of my industry. And also in my network, I'm in the top 12%, which I was quite pleased about because I actively follow thought leaders because I like to see what they're doing. But this is just a great way of you going in when you're spending a bit of time working on your profile just to see how the LinkedIn numbers match with what you're doing. So just to round off, so why is it important? We are living in a world where we're not going into the office as much now. If we are having meetings, we're probably having them over Zoom. We're not having that sort of social interaction where you get to talk to people and give them a sense of who you are. So anything you can do that helps people understand your personality, what you exude, can really help you. And this phrase I got from somebody on LinkedIn that's saying, when there was a discussion around first and third person, and it was like, people buy from people, people engage with people. In that about summary section, if I get a real sense of who you are, when we meet or when we do that Zoom chat or whenever, I feel like I know more about you. And as I say, I've got some nuggets that can help break that ice in those initial conversations. But most importantly, be true to yourself, be kind, and be constructive. Because if you exude that, then the chances are the people interact with you will do that as well. And also your feed will reflect that. So just in conclusion, it's focusing what you want. You're building your personal brand. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You know, take your time, get it right, adapt it. When you are thinking about engaging with your feed, plan what you're going to do. Perhaps talk to people about it. Perhaps talk to your social media team. Are there things that your company are creating that you can start by sharing with your network? That you can, something that's official that you can add your personal spin on, that you can position in a positive way, slightly differently. The testing and learning is really important. If you're spending time doing this, you want to know that it's working. So are people engaging with it? Are you getting good comments from it? Are you spending a lot of time on something and it's not really going anywhere? Do you need to think about how you can find the right sort of hashtags so you know that you're going to find an audience who are interested in that as well? If you're on more than one platform, make sure that you're thinking about that platform and the content that works on there. Don't just assume because it flew on Instagram that it's going to work on LinkedIn. And actually, if you are on several platforms, you want to give people a reason to navigate from one to the other. So how that's going to work. The navigation, again, no dead ends. If you're going to take people from one platform to another, make sure that you're keeping them within your world. The getting out what you put in isn't just to do with the amount of hours or days or whatever you spend on it. It's about being quite savvy about what you want to get out of it and spending your time on the platforms that are going to work for you. So it may be that it's a combination of Twitter or LinkedIn. It could be that it's just LinkedIn because actually your professional brand is what you're going to concentrate on and what you want to do. Again, review and adapt. That's really important. But most importantly of all is you are your brand. So really make sure that you're emphasizing who you are when you put this forward. And I'm sorry about my phone. Nobody ever rings my landline. So where you can find me, I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do much on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Clubhouse. As you can see, the professional ones are the ones with my picture. The not so professional ones are the picture of my gorgeous dog. But for me, my brand is very much on LinkedIn. And I'm open on all of them, but I'm very aware that I'm open on all of them, so that I always think, and the best thing I ever did on Facebook was follow my boss, because it always made me think, am I posting things here that I want everybody to find? And I think the other thing to think about when you're posting anything on any platform is you're publishing it to the world. Potentially anyone can find it. You can put something up and delete it, but someone can screenshot it. So just be wary of that. As I say, when I was a researcher, none of these platforms existed, and the internet existed when I was a researcher. But you're fair game. If you've published something, somebody will be able to find it. So always make sure that anything that you publish, you are happy to be in the public domain. Thank you. I think we've got a bit of time. Yeah, we've got 7 minutes for questions. And I will share this deck. So Harry, Ross, you can share that with anybody who's here today.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Lots of thanks coming into the chat and engagement. People feel it's been a really useful session. One comment is, I've learned so much, and I don't think I would have learned this anywhere else. It's been really unique and timely experience for me today. So thank you.
Thank you. That's lovely.
A couple of questions. Going back to the desired job title that you mentioned earlier on, is that visible for everyone to see?
When you say desired job title, do you mean the headline that you put on your profile? Or do you mean when you were searching for keywords? If you're searching for keywords, nobody knows what you're searching for. That's purely just a search function.
I think that was the one she was referring to.
Yeah, in the bit where you go in to build a resume and you put that in, basically that's just pulling your profile off, and then you can search for as many different job titles in there. That's just the search engine then going through and identifying the keywords. No, nobody would know you've done that search. LinkedIn will know you've done that search, but they wouldn't publish that with anybody.
Fantastic, thank you. Another question is, do you recommend paying for premium LinkedIn membership, and what benefits does that give?
The premium is an interesting question. They will offer you a month for free. My normal standard answer is, if you're going through a career transition at LHH, as part of the CRN, you get LinkedIn Learning as part of the package. LinkedIn Learning is by far away the benefit from doing premium, because you get I can't remember how many thousands of courses, I think that's 60,000 courses on there, and that's great. The premium is also good because you get, I think it's 20 in messages a month, so that you can contact people who aren't your first connection without having to invite them to connect and hope that they're going to connect. That can be good in a professional sense. If you want to invite somebody to be a speaker, or you want to discuss something, then you can go to them directly. I would say, and it's also good because if you noticed, when I did that resume search for keywords, it actually unlocks all the keywords and not just a selection of them. I would suggest, if you get the offer of having a free month, take it. Make sure you cancel it way before the month is up, because I took it for a month and then 2 days before went, I need to cancel it. And by the time it had all processed, I'd had to pay for another month as well. Some people find it really useful. I would say take the trial and see. If you are in the job search function, it will tell you, based on your profile, that it'll rank you on the people who've applied for that job. What I would say with that is, that's only people who've applied through LinkedIn. So if it's not a job that's unique to LinkedIn, then you don't really know, because people could have applied through other job boards or through the company site. But I would say, if you're offered the opportunity to take the free trial, take it. Just remember to cancel it so that they don't take another month's payment.
So another quick question here. You mentioned in the presentation about posting once a week, posting some content once a week. When would you say is the best time to actually post that content throughout the week? Is there a specific day, time in the day that you feel it's better to actually get your notes and your messages up?
It's really interesting. There has been a lot of research around this, and the pandemic has slightly skewed things, because LinkedIn tended to be really busy Monday to Fridays, and the key sort of usage times were 7 till 9, 12:30 to 1:30, 7 till 9 in the evening, because it sort of reflected people traveling from work and when they were doing things. That sort of changed. It tends to be tricky to sort of, it tends to be a test and learn thing, because it sort of depends where your audience is. A lot of people I know have posted things on a Sunday evening because people will see it on Monday morning. What I would say is, if you're posting something and you've spent a bit of time on it, you can tag your people in your network, so they'll be notified. So you do the ampersand and their name has to be in your network. You can't just sort of tag Richard Branson and hope that he's going to see it and share it with his network. But that immediately sends a notification to people so that they know that you've posted something. Tell people you're going to post something so that they can actively search for it. LinkedIn looks at the first 30 minutes activity. And if something is getting a lot of activity, it will go, oh, this is popular, I'm going to start posting it out to lots of people. But it really, there isn't a hard and fast answer. It comes down to that test and learn. Think about when you are most likely to be interacting with LinkedIn. And is that when you think most of your peers are likely to be interacting with LinkedIn? The danger is, well, it's not a danger, but it's global. So you might find that you post something and it's massive in Australia. But that's because someone's picked it up in the middle of the night, because you know, it's really difficult. It tends to be a test and learn. But I would say it's just trying to make sure when you do post it, that, and especially if you spend a bit of time working on it, that you've let people know and you've thought about the hashtags you're going to add, so that it's going to go into those feed of sort of like-minded people and like-minded posts.
That's great, thanks. And probably one final question just to wrap us up. I suppose LinkedIn seems to have monopolised this market, certainly with about 720 million users globally. Is there, or would you say there's any pretenders to the throne? Is there any other social media platforms that are up and coming? I know there's Clubhouse and things, but is there anything else you would say that's up and coming that other people might want to engage and look at for their own social brand online?
I'd say at the moment, purely because LinkedIn is now backed by Microsoft, that in terms of the amount of time and effort and building that personal brand, it tends to be the default one to go to. I know that some people, depending on the industry they're in, will use things like Instagram or perhaps Twitter because they know that they've got an audience there. But I would certainly say at the moment, I don't feel, other than Clubhouse, which I think is really interesting, although I found it completely addictive when it first came out, and I was joining rooms all the time. I think that there's some interesting work happening with Clubhouse, and they've got some people who they've taken some people from the TED Talks organization, so they're definitely trying to establish that as an audio thought networking place. And also, don't discount YouTube. If you're happy to do things that are visual, you know, podcasts or advice on things, YouTube has got a massive footprint, and then you can take people back to LinkedIn. I think a lot of the time it's around using your network, going back to the example of people on lots of different platforms. Sometimes it's not sort of one platform, it's the sum of all the parts, and how you can show a different part of your brand on a different platform.
Absolutely, thanks for that. Well, Zoe, that was a super useful session. I learned a lot myself on it. Thanks very much for your time. I'm sure everybody took a lot from it, and we'll see you all soon.
Yes, thank you so much. And as I say, I'll share the slides with Harry, and then that can go out alongside the recording. And as I say, if you've got any other questions, just follow me on LinkedIn and ask me a question.
Thanks, Zoe.